the Army values, the Warrior ethos, coaching, and therapy. This is Warrior Leadership. This is Warrior Leadership.
Let's go.
So I'm JJ Hardy, the coach, and I'm here
DB, the therapist,
with DB, the therapist. And we are doing a broadcast today with our final topic in the series of emotional intelligence, and we're going to talk about social skills. DB, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing good, man. Amazing, man. I love that. I love the intro, man. That was amazing how it just flowed in there. You got the mindset, then you got the leadership. Oh man, we're ready to get after it today, man.
We are
ready to get after it.
We are about to make it happen. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Sorry, that pumps me up. I don't know why, but it's like a dynamic trailer. We're gonna quit geeking out on some stupid trailer. We're gonna get into this. All right. So, social skills, or as I've also noticed, they call it social awareness. Again, you're the therapist, so this is one of those types of topics. I'm going to let you go ahead and start off with what that means to you, and we'll just get this conversation going.
So, social skills, social awareness. If you think about this, so we're talking about emotional intelligence, and here we are ending off the series on as one of the pillars for emotional intelligence is social skills. So if we go back to the first week where we talked about self-awareness, right? This sort of fourth pillar that's closing the loop here is letting us know that the whole purpose of emotional intelligence is so that way we will be aware how we show up when we engage with other people. Clearly, human beings are social creatures. There's so many people who try to, say that, well, I'm an introvert. I'm more used to, being kind of in the background. But the truth is that every single human being, whether they're introverted or extroverted, are still social creatures. And social connection is like medicine. Literally, social support is so important. It literally holds its own space on the wellness wheel of life. And so we cannot disregard the power of connecting with other trusting individuals. And so what I know as a therapist is, over the 20 years of me working with people, most of the time they have had some relationship or relationships that have caused trauma, have caused other issues in their life. And it's caused them to end up on this island of isolation by themselves. So much so that almost every mental illness, if you look in the DSM, isolation is included as one of the symptoms. And so social skills, social awareness is really the point, the whole what's so important about emotional intelligence and understanding what's stopping a person from connecting to other people.
When we talk about leadership, I think about I do think about showing up, but I think it's more than that, right? So in terms of how leaders communicate, how leaders interact with their subordinates or their families. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's people, making sure that you are aware of what that looks like, regardless of what your insecurities are. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Does that mean you just don't do it? No. You may be uncomfortable in some situations, but you still, and you said it very clearly, you have to show up. And showing up is more than just being present and accounted for. Showing up means making sure that you are actively engaging with people, whether it's your family or your employees in the workplace or your friends. You're not going to have many friends if you don't engage. If you're standoffish or if you're completely disconnected, you're not going to keep those friends very long unless they have the same problems. Then that might be a mutual thing. But, when it comes to emotional intelligence, having the ability to push through some of those boundaries It's going to help you as a person when it comes to growth, and it's going to help those around you. And it's like you talked about the wellness wheel. Well, I'm going to use this as a full circle. If you push yourself and you grow and then help those grow around you, all the benefits are going to come back to you, and you're only going to get better and better and better. But before you say something, you talked about the island of isolation. Wow. Never heard it put that way. So we talked about this on last week's call, how when you are an employee, especially an execution level employee, sometimes you are just out there going through the motions every day. And if you don't have your leaders engaging with you, you are literally in an island of isolation, even though you're surrounded by people. Mm-hmm. And that stuck out when you said that more than anything else that you said, because if we're talking about improving every workplace, which is what I'm trying to do with my training and coaching, then the problem that needs to be solved is making Joe Snuffy riding a forklift on the line, making it so that he does not feel like he's alone when he's just trying to do his job and provide for his family.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, and I think from the therapy side of the house, it's that employee or that supervisor, because I mean, we all have leaders above us, right? I think that the challenge is that when someone is feeling that island of isolation in the work environment, the reality of it is that they've probably experienced that too in their family life. And I think that's where, some people, I've seen this happen, and even I'm guilty of this at times, where, you look for that fatherly figure or that motherly figure or that big brother, big sister, and work. And when you do that, when you haven't repaired those previous relationships, sometimes you set yourself up for failure because you expect certain things from those people. And when we talk about poor social skills and building and maintaining relationships, you can't have those enmeshed type of relationships when you're working in a working environment if you haven't dealt with your trauma or your defectiveness schema or all these other issues that affect people. And so I think it's very important to do that background work before you go and get coaching, because what you'll see, coach, is you'll have people come to you and they have these unresolved issues, and yet you're ready to take them and their business to the next level when they have these unresolved, what we call psychosocial issues. And so that's where I think when we talk about the bridge between coaching and therapy, when you are able to identify that, you can then refer them over to a therapist, and then vice versa. If I'm working with someone and I notice, like, okay, this person has already, they've done a trauma narrative, they addressed all of their issues from the past, I've given them some tools to build up those social skills. Now they're ready to get out there and engage. Now it's time for them to go to a coach. Like, they don't need to stay in therapy for the rest of their life. They need to move on and go to a coach, so that way they can actually go to the next level and build those actual relationships through networking and through other means that we utilize to connect people to each other.
You brought up something very interesting. Some people do work better alone, and they don't necessarily want to engage, but at the same time, they do need that human interaction. But maybe it's limited. In your opinion, and this is something I've encountered, I'll share after you share, but when it comes to a therapy standpoint, I just want the people in my audience, especially to know from what the therapist would say, DB the therapist, what to do when someone is an introvert, but the job requires more of them.
Oh man, that's a good question. And I think the first thing, as a therapist, this is like a case by case scenario with each person. I would say you want to explore why that is. And because clearly the job that chose you, I would say, is it's a perfect fit for you. But when you find yourself this introvert in that situation where it's stretching you, I think you want to be able to explore the why am I not, what's causing me to not move forward, and I call it digging under the iceberg and getting to the core emotion and the core reasoning why I don't want to move forward. I mean, and that's something to be honest with you, before you even reach out to a therapist, you can journal and sort of figure out what is holding you up. You know, I'll say this right now. I mean, literally, I keep it next to me. This is my journal here that I've wrote right in and I fill up, and it allows you to really capture your thoughts. And it's something else that you can do. There's also thought records that you can download and really go in there and figure out, like, when my boss asks me to do this thing out of my comfort zone, because I'm an introvert, what's coming up for you? Because you'll start to figure out stuck points and patterns that you can work through. And when you do that in the context of therapy, now you have a sounding board and another human being to help you catch some of those universal thoughts and stuck points that you may miss, right? We're humans. And so we won't catch everything. And, you know, two more set of eyes are better. And in my case, 4 more eyes are better.
Well, hold on. In our case,
there you go.
Let's get real. Okay.
There you go.
No, I think that's great. And, you know, digging under the iceberg is really good. You know, I know that me personally, I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So I am able to engage with the public, but there are some situations that when it's really, really busy, and I'm not going to go into the psychosocial aspects of being a post-traumatic stress. I'm not a victim. Anyway, having post-traumatic stress disorder, but I will say that though I can push through that, we discussed this earlier today, you know, it could be a couple of hours. And by the time that I am done, I mean, I feel like I just ran a marathon, and I've done that before. And I think that's probably more exhausting than running a marathon, except for it doesn't provide additional joint issues, because I have those as well. Those were caused partially by the marathon.
I got you. You know, I want to add some more context to that. And then I also want to flip the question back to you too. But if you think about this, I know we're talking about the 4th pillar of social skills, but you really brought out a good point right now, Coach, is
did that on purpose.
The self-awareness, which is one of the other pillars, right? And also the folks around you, and appreciate your vulnerability by, you know, acknowledging your post-traumatic stress, because people have to have empathy for those individuals, and that's again another one of those pillars. And
not apathy and not feeling sorry for.
There you go.
Empathy.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, no. You're good. We talk about this a lot. And so, you know, for when these 4 pillars all come together, then that's where we can achieve what we call this homeostasis, or this balance, man, this equilibrium that, you know yourself, and that's the self-awareness. And so you tell yourself, I'm going to get out here and put myself in this uncomfortable space, but I'm going to take a break and get a nap in, you know, get some exercise, whatever your thing is, to get yourself back into the center so you can keep engaging in these social skills that ultimately is going to build you up. But it's over time, right? Because again, from a therapeutic standpoint, we already have universal thoughts about people, man. And, you know, part of being a warrior is persevering and continuing to move forward. And but when you know yourself the way that you do, you can take that step back, and that's going to keep you in the resiliency zone, man. So I commend you for really putting that, knowing yourself and being able to take that step back. So I'm gonna flip the same question back to you that you asked me from a coaching standpoint. How do you respond the same way that like how I would have to look at it from a therapeutic standpoint, from a coaching standpoint? What would be your response?
For somebody who's got maybe post-traumatic stress disorder, the anxiety, or maybe
so like
introvert sort of
introvert. Yes.
Yeah. Well, again, just like you said, it's a case-by-case basis. No matter what situation you're in, you have to meet people where they are. And that doesn't mean letting them skate by on work that somebody else is going to have to get done. But maybe when you give them the instruction, or you notice, because if you know your people, as soon as you tell them, hey, I need you to go do this, they give you that look. And if you know them, that look is obvious. If you don't take the time to get to know your people, if you're not leading them and having conversations with them on a day-to-day basis, then you're not going to know it. But that look is telling you, I'm not comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. And from a leadership standpoint, that's not something that you ignore, because if you keep on ignoring that emotion that comes out of that person, that's obviously what it is. It's an emotion. Then you're going to lose that person, whether it's their quality of work or they're just going to leave that job. But you have a conversation with them about it. I mean, it's simple. Everything is conversational. Hey, Joe Snuffy, come on over here for a second. We're going to have a talk about this.
Private Joe Snuffy.
Private Joe Snuffy is everywhere. And Joe Snuffy is when he's a veteran and he's not in the military anymore. Now he's just Joe Snuffy. So Joe Snuffy's even out in the civilian workforce.
RJ Snuffy.
RJ, that's right. So the key thing, though, is to ask them,
yes,
what went through your mind when I said that to you? That's always what I ask, because I don't know. There are some people out there that can read people's emotions a lot better than I can. But if I see there's something off, I have to ask. What they say will drive my next comment. It's active listening. And if you don't take action, maybe they just need somebody to go out there with them to get the anxiety out. And then once they get started and they're doing the work, maybe they're good. Maybe they need a little bit more than that. Maybe you need to assign a battle buddy to them. Well, they don't call that. That's not what they call it out in the civilian workforce. But you assign a partner to them and let them work together to get that task done. Yeah, something else may not be done well, but as you know, if you find out that somebody is having some true anxiety, the worst thing that could happen is you send them out there and either A, they screw up the job, B, which is worse, they get hurt, or C, you cause more emotional damage to that person. And you don't want to do any of that. I mean, maybe you'll find out that they're not the right fit for your organization. And I think that person would probably appreciate you noticing that, because if you know they're going to get put in that same position over and over and over and over again, maybe there's a better fit somewhere else. And, you hate to do it that way, but it's a case-by-case basis. But basically, it's just having a conversation with them using active listening.
There you go.
And when I say active listening, I know we've discussed this before, but active listening is when you are talking to somebody and they're saying a bunch of stuff to you. You're not just in the background twiddling your thumbs, looking around, going, oh, whatever, looking like you're not engaged, and responding with something that you were thinking about, which sometimes, by the way, is horrible. I've had it done where somebody would respond when I'm talking to them about getting a task done. They will say something about their mom afterwards or something like that. It's horrible. That's not active listening. Active listening is the opposite, where you respond, oh my gosh, wait for it, to what that person said.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Is that groundbreaking?
It is groundbreaking. That's, it is groundbreaking, and it may sound so simple, but I'm gonna tell you something, man. Especially when I'm doing couples counseling, I love couples counseling for this reason. When I sit in the room with a couple, and I'm like, I'm gonna see whether or not this person actually implements a very simple skill, which is when you think about active listening and you break it down. And we're gonna talk more about this I'm getting excited because this is us leaning into, and it's flowing into our next series about really going further into the social intelligence and this just being able to connect with people, because it really is a skill that you have to build. And so, like, with these couples, what happens is that they will not be, they will literally sit there and they'll be formulating their response while the other person is talking. And every time someone does that, you can tell right off the back because of the first thing that comes out of their mouth. Like,
oh my gosh, you're so right.
And part of that, it could be an employee, it could be a employee employer relationship, you know, and that same dynamic can play out because if you're the leader and you think you know all the answers and you're not listening to your employees, then I could see that again play out the same way. And there's some employees who would be like, you know what, I'm just going to let it just keep going in that direction, even though I know something bad is going to happen, but they're not listening to me. And so when people don't feel like they're being listened to, then that's going to create a wedge between you and that person. And that's not how a servant leader would lead, right? And I think that's so important when you think about, you know, you kind of you hit on this earlier, Coach, and you know, you came up, you had this really great quote this morning about servant leadership, man, and it hit home. And I don't want to steal your thunder. Do you remember what it was this morning when you brought up servant leadership when we were talking?
Once you say it, I'll remember it, but go ahead.
Well, you know,
you don't remember it either.
No. So, you know, this morning we're talking about servant leadership, and I want to say that, and I'm trying to quote you verbatim. It's hard for me to grab your exact words, but basically, like, you can't, if you're basically, I'll sum it up and paraphrase it. You're not a servant leader if you're not an active listener. If you're not an active listener, if you don't value what people think and feel, you can't call yourself a servant leader. It's a requisite of it. Matter of fact, to go exactly what you said, it was a servant leader is driven by their ego and not their super ego, which is saying the same thing that I just said. Like these people who call themselves leaders, they're strict, they're completely driven by their ego. And because of that self-centered desire, the desires of those impulsive desires of their id, because they give in to that, they're missing this wisdom and knowledge that says, you know what, other people may have more information about a certain topic than me. That's why if you think about the idea subject matter expert or SME, right? You should listen to people because they're the subject matter expert of their lives. And so when you don't value people like that, that's poor social skills for you to, you know what I mean?
Well, and I'll take it one step further. So if you really are a leader and a subject matter expert, you got there by leaning on the expertise of those around you, not by just only thinking what you think and not taking what anybody else says into consideration. And I think this is also the perfect time to introduce that next topic because you just said it. You knew that already. That's what you were doing. I already know that's you. Hey, but no, we're going to talk about ego versus super ego.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go too deep into that on this call, but you know, that's going to be the first podcast in another series on, you know, we actually called it social skills this morning, but I think we should change that to social intelligence. That is a really good way of saying it because it's not, if we're following up from emotional intelligence, social intelligence is how you use all of these social skills and combine them with emotional intelligence to become successful. And by the way, that's in management. That's in that's any leadership position, to be quite honest with you. But if you are a business owner, which is the crowd that we really want to be talking to anyway, and you're going out there trying to grow your business, if you can't have social intelligence, if you don't build up social intelligence, your life is going to be very, very difficult because financially you're going to be struggling if you can't go out in public and have conversations.
You know,
I don't really know what else to say about that. But
there is nothing else to say.
But that's what the next series is all about. And we're going to start that off with ego versus super ego, because that ego crap has to be put aside so that you can truly go out there and learn and grow and gather information and just be vulnerable.
Yes. Coach, the thing about the ego is this. It's interesting because folks that are ego driven and driven by impulsivity and about their selfish nature, I think a lot of that has to do with self-preservation and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about this, the super ego, and I know we're gonna go into depth more later, the super ego thinks about the other, the person outside of yourself, which again, that's another one of those pillars and within emotional intelligence, which is empathy, thinking about other people. And when you look, think about how if we work backwards, we ended off on social skills, but if you go backwards, back towards the other four pillars, like it all makes sense. And all four pillars have to be erected in order for you to have a solid leader, a solid human being, a warrior. Like the only way to truly be an effective human being is that you have to have all four of those pillars up and effective, because it just, I mean, you can't build a house with all the pillars up, right? And I think that we have to take our time, and we have to continue to always monitor ourselves, be aware of how certain things are making us feel, and if it's connected to something deeper, right? Because a lot of times we'll be triggered by something or activated by something, and we won't know where it's coming from. And that's where, for me, that's where therapy is so important, is that therapy forces you to dig deeper and understand the connection between what's presenting today and what story is hidden in my unconscious mind. Which, by the way, teaser, guess where the impulsive desires of the id lie? Do you think they lie in the unconscious mind or the conscious mind?
In the unconscious mind.
In the unconscious mind. And so this is why we have to bring the things that are in the unconscious, no matter how painful they are, no matter how much they may hurt us. We have to bring those situations to the forefront, and we have to rewrite those narratives that we tell ourselves. And that's why if they come to you, coach, and they tell you, look, I want to take my business to the next level, and I want to grow by this much in the next 4 quarters or whatever it is. This is where I want to be by the 4th quarter. Well, that's good. That sounds good. It's a great goal. But if you have these other barriers that are happening inside of you and inside of your company, guess what? Those things are going to cause your growth to be stagnant. And so in order for your company to grow, you have to grow, which means that if there's weeds in your life, meaning the weeds of your life are the unconscious material in your mind that's holding you back, if you don't deal with those things, your company may grow, but it's gonna be stagnated by those weeds that are in there that you're not addressing.
Oh, that's a great metaphor. But you're right. What I tell a lot of people, and it's almost exactly what you said, it's just rephrased, is a business is nothing more than a group of people coming together to get a job done. Mm-hmm. If you're not right in your mind, how well are you going to treat other people? And if you're not treating people well, and they don't stay with your organization because they don't like the way they're being treated, or even if you're not intentionally causing problems for that person, you're not going to make the perfect environment if you're not right with yourself. If you're managing a team, you cannot properly manage a team if you are not right in your own brain. If you don't have your emotional and social intelligence up to snuff, if you have underlying issues, the icebergs that we always talk about that are plaguing you and keeping you from growing as an individual to the point where you can support that team, then you're not going to be able to do it well. And that's only one part of it. There are many parts of it. I have an acronym, VOICES, that I use that have all the principles of leadership that build a strong foundation, but emotional intelligence is in there. Mm-hmm. So that's why this stuff is important, and we're going to keep on talking about it. But we're at that 30 minutes. DB, I'd like to ask you if there's anything that you would like to say as a closing statement.
No, just stay tuned. I would say really look out for our next series. I think this is really going to be a amazing series, just like this last series was. And we thank you guys for joining us, and appreciate it.
And I'm going to say, just like I always say, and I'm probably a broken record by now, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you like this content, if it resonates with you, then share it, repost it, like it, heart it, whatever you do, subscribe to it if you're on YouTube. But more importantly, if you want to keep the conversation going, or if there's anything that you need clarity on, make sure you put a comment or in the form of just a regular comment or a question below this video. We'll get back to you, or hopefully somebody in the audience gets back to you as well, because that's how these things make change in a community. You can't do it in here. It's got to be done in a wide setting. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this call. I always enjoy getting on here with DB and talking about the hard stuff, because that's kind of what this is. And hopefully it resonates with you. Y'all have a great and blessed evening. Take care.